That's available on the council website as well as in hard copy here at City Hall. So rather than ask them each to read all their answers over again, we'll do it in a sort of an abbreviated version. But there will be time for them to discuss their reasons for wanting to be on the positions. Following the interviews, then we will begin our regular council meeting at 6:30 this evening, and it's during that council meeting that we actually conduct the election of, or the selection of the members. So that with that, I'd like to go ahead and begin. I'll begin by asking the first group, and that will be the Budget Committee applicants, to come. And I believe what we'll do is have you sit at the center section. And let's see who's here. Okay. Welcome. I'd like first to start, I will introduce each of you, and then I'll have you begin the process. Our three applicants for the Budget Committee are Mary Ayala? Correct. Mary Ayala. And we have Tyson Pruitt at that end, and Nathan Wersch? Yep. Is that correct? Good. All right. Why don't we start with Mary? And would you please tell us a little bit, 2 to 3 minutes, of why you're interested in being on the Budget Committee and some particular skills that you think that you bring to that, and then we'll have questions from the floor.
Certainly. As I mentioned in the cover letter that I sent you all, I've been an economist for almost 30 years, a professional economist in the public sector, and I have worked on a lot of budget issues. I have been involved in a lot of analyses that dealt with budget issues. I've forecasted for 12 years revenues for the state of Florida. Then I came to Oregon and I did quite a few bill analyses for the legislature looking at the impacts of alternative tax bills. And so I'm very adept at looking at the trade-offs and the costs of pieces of legislation. I'm very adept at as an economist, at always considering the trade-offs and the opportunity costs. I think that's the perspective I'd like to bring to a budget council. I'm not an accountant, okay, but I do think that in government, particularly today, we have to start looking at some of the programs and the costs and the benefits of them, because we've got an enormous 5 years ahead of us, during which time you expect a shortfall. And so there you have two options. You're going to either have to find ways to increase your revenues through alternative revenue sources, or you're going to have to take a hard look at some of the programs. And I think, having worked in the public sector for a long time in various agencies, I recognize that sometimes, it's very hard to cut back in a program, or just to postpone it for a while. Mainly, it's because I think people are often uncertain about how the change will impact them personally. And so that process has to be done with some forethought and transparency, and I think that makes it work. The other thing I think I mentioned in my cover letter was that there are a lot of opportunities to consider both revenue changes as well as just cutting budgets. Cutting programs. There are alternatives. There are ways to look at different revenue sources and evaluate how you might improve them. For example, I know that no one would appreciate a recommendation to have voters vote on a sales tax. I know no one would appreciate that. On the other hand, I think there are a lot of issues that could be, a lot of financial issues that could be solved with one. And I think some of that would benefit the city of Salem a lot, because we end up, as citizens, paying for a lot of public uses of our facilities and services from non-residents and people who are here during the legislative session. And I know from prior experience in other states that where tourism is a very big factor, a sales tax is absorbed by tourists, and it helps cover some of those costs. So there are other things that I think are important to consider besides just cutting programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselors, are there any questions for this candidate? Counselor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mary, are there any areas of city costs, city programs that you're specifically interested in reviewing or have determined you'd be interested in cutting?
Not cutting necessarily, but I'd love to review enterprise zones and urban renewal programs.
What about them?
Well, I just know that a lot of these programs are very attractive because they take tax increment financing, and with bonds you can build an enormous, improve the city a lot and bring businesses into the city, and it's vital. It's beautiful when it's done, and it's being done right now. On the other hand, the process itself entails an upfront cost to taxpayers. In other words, we're paying the debts, we're paying in a way for the future residents when these urban renewal areas are built out, then residents will appreciate the benefit from increased tax revenues. But during the process, right, you've got to you won't be getting those tax revenues for a while. And so I'd like to look at it because sometimes some of these urban renewal areas, such as in Portland, for example, which is a model program, but in some of those cases, those programs build and then they continue on for a long time. And the money's never come back actually to the city because they keep extending the urban renewal area.
We have a couple anyway that are, I think we have at least one that's about 40 years old now. I mean, it's been going for a long, long time, if I recall correctly. Is that the kind of thing you're thinking of?
Yes, I'd look at those in terms of cost and benefits. Like, when is the payoff on this?
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Nanke and then Counselor Clem.
Kind of follow up on that thought line. We have a couple of different urban renewal areas, Fairview and now the Mill Creek Corporate Center, that were providing no tax dollars because they were owned by the state prior to us taking those and converting them. Any issue with that kind of an urban renewal area?
I'm sorry, I didn't, you'll have to repeat the question.
We have at least two.
There were like 4 or 5, I thought.
Two that were not in the property tax paying zone because they were actually properties of the state.
Okay.
So they were providing no tax dollars, hence we really aren't foregoing any tax dollars by taking those, moving them into the
I'm not
city
familiar
and-
with those. I haven't looked at them in that detail at this point at all.
Okay, Counselor Clem.
Madam Mayor, wanting to make sure we're equitable with all 3 candidates, would it be okay if we let each one of them speak, and then that way we can make sure all 3 answer the same questions? Because that's what we've done previously, just to make sure. Because I'm interested to hear what Nathan and Tyson would say to the same questions. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can we let all 3 of them talk, and then we can ask questions that all 3 can answer at the same time.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question.
Okay.
I can only create one question.
No, that's fine. All right, we can do it that way. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mary. All right. Nathan, would you like to go next, please? And just in 2 or 3 minutes, tell us why you would like to be on the Budget Committee and what skills in particular you think you bring to that.
Okay. Living in Salem and working in Salem for the majority of my life, I've always been a big advocate for being involved in your community. And whether that's through current government agencies such as the Transit Task Force or the School Board Bond Oversight Committee, and then even on the nonprofit sector, Law Enforcement for Youth, being able to take a look at, you've got obviously expenditures and you've got revenue, and just be able to bring a private side sector to that. It's something I deal with on a daily basis, working for the credit union on the local level, and then transferring that, forward, to as an organization. And just another area to be involved with. It's relatively looking at some different ideas that are out there, being connected, to organizations, West Salem Business Association, locally here, and then those other agencies that are out there, the soliciting feedback from them would be beneficial.
Okay. Thank you. Tyson?
Thank you. Yes, Tyson Pruitt. I'm a CPA and also am licensed in investments. And so what I think I bring to the table is an understanding of both the accounting, finance end of things, as well as a background in what's happening with the markets. I'm not an economist, and hopefully never will be, frankly. I think that's, if there's a few jobs tougher than being an accountant during these times, it's probably being an economist. But I think it's important to really look at things from as many areas as possible, which is why I actually went out and got both the securities license as well as the accountant. Even though actually I never sold a stock in my life, it definitely helps round out the skill set that you bring to a table. As far as my interest in the board, one is I feel that my skill set definitely fits the board. I also think, as was mentioned, it's really important to be active and involved in the community. Being a business owner in the community, the better our city runs, the better everything works here, schools, parks, the better we can make our community live, the better it's going to be for all of us, both short-term and long-term. And I think it's important to take, not just, I understand this is a West Salem position, but I also think it's important to look at what's in the best interest of the entire city as a whole, not just territorial with Salem. Obviously, it's important for West Salem to be represented, but it's definitely important to look at the whole city.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, are there questions from councilors? Yes, Councilor Bennett.
I will ask the same question. It just sort of reiterate, are there areas of city spending that you've either are specifically interested in or have sort of targeted they're of interest to you, whether to cut or enhance? I mean, sort of, if you've been following our budgeting process over the past few years.
For me, Nathan Wirch, one of the biggest things I would say is emergency services, things that are absolutely necessary for the citizens of the city to be able to operate in. Police, fire, water, sewer, those are areas that they're essential, and we need to try and maintain current levels without impacting, obviously, livability of the citizens. If you decrease those levels and crime rate goes up or response times go up, it's definitely a detriment to attracting new potential, citizens to the area. And then looking at, it's a difficult area, but what are the things that we have to have, and what are the things that maybe we can coordinate with other organizations out there to deliver upon?
Did you want to ask that question of each of the individuals?
Yeah, Tyson.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I think ultimately, to me, it comes down to a prioritization. At one point, you have to look at the core services that really only the city can provide, and you've got to take care of those core services. Once you get outside those core services, then I think it becomes that creative hat of how do we provide the funding that is necessary to provide those. Because I've got 5 young kids. They're at the library all the time. They're at the parks. They're using all these other services, and if they looked at it, those would be their favorite. I mean, that's the thing. If you went to them and said, "Well, I don't know what we're going to do with the library or the parks," they would be, really upset. And so they're really key. But there may be ways to work with parks and library, other sources of financing, creative. Whereas I'm not sure that we have the same choices with fire and police and some of those services.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that you've
I'm
asked
done.
each, okay. Councilor Clem and then Councilor Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for all 3 of you. Not sure the order you want them to go, and maybe start with
Whichever
Tyson
way,
and work
that's
that way.
good.
But if that's okay. But council has a policy, or the budget committee has a policy to establish a certain level of reserves that you hold on, carrying cash for the emergencies and contingencies that come up during the year. Besides, it's always a good idea to have a rainy day fund. But you're faced with a decision of cutting back on parks maintenance. Keeping parks positions in the budget will cause your city budget to be not maintaining those reserves by about 1%. What do you do and why? Do you keep the parks positions in there and violate your reserve policy? Or do you cut the parks positions and maintain your reserve policy?
You must have been looking, you're sitting here close, you must have been looking to the first item I had written down on my notes, which was the reserve dollars. Well, and I think that really is a very critical component of things, because one of the things that you understand is the impact of reducing your reserves by a percentage and things like the bond rate that the city may have, the future costs to the city government if those reserves are reduced. And so I think you have to look at not just what the short-term impact is, but also the long-term. You also realize, I understand, that property taxes is a huge chunk. Those don't come in evenly through the course of the year. You have to have dollars set aside to be able to offer all those services through the course of the year. So I think you have to really be careful. I am very hesitant to look at reducing the reserve dollars unless there is a plan in place within a reasonable period of time to get those dollars back to where they need to be. Because I think contingencies are critical in a personal budget, in a business, and in a city council budget. So my leaning would be to try and figure out other ways to raise revenue rather than dipping into the reserves.
Nathan?
A rainy day fund or reserves that you have are definitely necessary. And kind of what Tyson was talking about, that it's difficult to dip into that. But if there is that strategic plan of we're going to take this amount and this is how we're going to get it back to the level that it should be, just as each of us do in our personal lives, there's always that emergency fund, whether that's a washer or dryer or refrigerator that goes out or whatever may happen. You sit there and say, we can't touch this, but something happens, we have to do it. If it's cutting staff, what are the creative ways to still try and maintain some level of park resemblance? If we sit there for the year and say, okay, we're not going to do any maintenance on the parks, the lawns aren't going to get mowed, the kids aren't going to be able to go to the park, and then they're going to sit there and wonder, so can we contract with other organizations, or can we do a similar to road cleanup, that organizations adopt parts of parks to assist with that. So, but it comes down to it, is it for me personally, it affects the livability, but it's not an emergency service.
Well, I did look at the 5-year projections, and you're lucky that you do have a reserve, or you'd be shortfall now. It's keeping you, like, the current $14 million reserve is keeping you afloat for the next couple of years. And I think that in itself suggests that the reserve is a good thing to have. It's helping right now, and I think that your problems don't really start bothering you in 2 years, and then you'll be under your budget limit, your reserve limit, really. So, in my opinion, I think I mentioned this in my cover letter, I would keep obviously, the most essential services untouched. I would make sure that you meet your debt obligations, or your interest rates will go up, and your bonding level will just decrease your bond rating. And then I take a hard look at the programs. I think that's my focus. Before I start cutting programs, I take a look at the programs themselves to see if there are ways that you can make them more efficient in some ways before you start cutting them. And I think that I look at this as an opportunity, because I think that possibly when the city got into its previous 5-year growth plan back in maybe 2000 or 2010, not 2010, before that, before the housing bubble, there might not have been as much interest or need to take a hard look at growth, whereas now you'll have an opportunity to develop a long-range budget, a more conservative plan, one that builds a healthy reserve balance. And I do think that many economists agree, I love Dan, that volatility in the markets could continue. And so future recessions, let's say, might be more severe than they've been in the past. That's the implication of all that. And I think reserve balances are important. Rainy day funds are important for that reason.
Okay. I believe that Councillor Clausen was next, and then Councillor Nanki after him.
Well, we can move on. Councilor Clem had my exact question.
Oh, all right, okay. Then
Excellent.
Councillor Nanki.
And I'll just kind of follow along with that. I think I asked a couple of you last time you were here, as far as dealing with reserve funds and bringing them back up if you actually are doing some depletion, and knowing that one should do that in a relatively short period of time rather than letting it hang out there and wish that it would fill back up. Your thoughts on where the economy will be in the next 5 years? Up, down, or flat?
And I want to encourage everyone to speak into your microphone because we are recording, so we want to be sure to have this on
Are you
tape.
speaking of Salem's economy, the county, the state, the nation?
Overall, Salem more in particular.
Okay. My first?
Yep. Yes,
Yes,
you.
so.
Okay, thank you. I'd say Salem will probably lag behind the rest of the county and the state simply because the revenues coming into the city of Salem are driven primarily by the government sector. And if you look at employment, right, as soon as your unemployment rate drops in this area, well, then your revenues, your consumption and your revenues in housing will start to creep back up. But I don't know, I think the economy myself is dragging. It's pretty stagnant right now, so until the financial system is more stable, and most economists are saying right now it's still tenuous, okay? We haven't seen major stability yet in the financial markets, but it's getting much, much better. But it's a global crisis. It's not just a national crisis. So when that starts to recover into the obvious man in the street, then your economy is bound to resume, okay, nationally, and then it'll trickle into the housing market, construction markets, which are always a good place for employment to start. It pays well, and that's why in most areas when the economy recovers, construction jumps right in, and then employment jumps right in there with it.
Nathan?
Locally here, Salem, I would say 18 to 36 months, you're going to start seeing a increase in all levels of what we had before. Oregon has historically fallen behind the rest of the U.S. So it's a slower progression. If you look at the housing market, what was occurring in the Sand States, Arizona, California, Florida, it started 18 to 24 months before us, before it started hitting here locally. Unfortunately, once it did hit us, it kind of followed that same pattern. Spending is at an all-time low for consumers. They're paying down credit card debt. They're saving more. They're not wanting to go out and make those big purchases anymore. And so I think that us as individuals need to look at that and say, okay, what can we do on the same side? We've got to be able to look at transferring that same thing to the city. And it may be that we save a little bit more now, or somehow to not necessarily, on the park side of things is, mentioning in regards to cutting jobs, but is there a way that we can create jobs through other avenues? So I think it's going to be a slow recovery, slow but steady overall, but we're going to make it out of it.
Tyson?
Well, my first thought when I heard you ask that question was, boy, if I had the surefire answer, I'd be having a pay-per-view event right now rather than doing it here. But what I can speak to primarily is I know that Salem lost a lot of jobs over the last few years. I know things like you talked about some of the zones that are out there that helped bring in jobs. We've had things come in that have helped make up that gap with Sanyo coming in and with the distribution center going in. So there's been some things that have brought jobs back, but still not to the level of the jobs that we've lost. And so I think it will take us a while to get those jobs back. And ultimately, without the jobs, that's what brings the revenue in, is we got to have the jobs. Now, as far as what I see within the local economy with the businesses and the clients that I work with is I think, a quiet optimism that we will get through it. It's an understanding that we may have seen the worst. It still may be difficult out there. We don't know what's going to happen with some of the foreclosures that they're still talking about and some of the things happening there. But we're starting to see people open their checkbooks again on some projects and things where people were just sitting on their money and saying, I'm just going to wait this out because I don't know what's happening. I'm starting to see people start looking at opportunities. Talking to a real estate agent today and saying, we're starting to see more activity. They say, and it's not all just the short sale type things. We're starting to see people buying. They may be price reduced from what we used to see. There may be challenges still, but they said we're up 3 times the number of sales at the same point this year as we were last year. So I'm hearing people cautiously optimistic. What does that mean ultimately? Does that mean we're going to have a huge amount of money coming in to repay these? Read in the paper a week ago talking about the impact of PERS and how that's going to affect the payback, et cetera. So we may have a great economy rolling and still not necessarily bringing those dollars into to the bottom line.
Councillor Bennett?
Well, Tyson, start with you, Tyson. As you look at the budget, the big expense is personnel in the city, and you mentioned PERS. We also, that's certainly going up. Health insurance costs are going up. I kind of like to just hear your thoughts on those sort of general areas of personnel. We've had members of the Budget Committee suggest that they should have a closer look at our personnel area, collective bargaining issue area, all of that. What's your view on the Budget Committee involvement in those kinds of discussions?
Well, my understanding with the Budget Committee is we can discuss a lot of those areas, but ultimately that's really kind of all it is a discussion, because it ultimately will go to the bargaining board, and we may be able to make some recommendations, but that's really all it is. I think it is important that people have things like health insurance and retirement. They really are important for people to have. It's critical. I think it comes down to a decision on some of the services and these kind of things as to what ultimately is it going to be, and are there ways. I know there was discussions with, I think it was the fire department and some of the overtime and some of those. Is there a way to maintain the benefits that we want our employees to have and yet find some ways to reduce the cost? Sometimes it's short term, sometimes it may be long term. Being competitive in the marketplace because you want to retain those good long time employees.
Nathan?
Being competitive is definitely key, because otherwise you're going to lose the experience and the knowledge base of those employees if they were to go elsewhere. So personnel is difficult to, it is the largest expense, but it's going to be difficult if you say, okay, we're going to reduce health benefits, we're going to reduce pay, we're not going to, re-up the contract, whatever it may be. So, but it's got to be a mutual come to the table and make that decision. And I think that the people that are going to the table understand what everybody's going through right now, not just individually, but as groups of people. So I think they might be a little bit more willing to make concessions where needed.
Thank you. Probably the odd man out here, but I'm taking a bigger picture of, I have a bigger grasp, I think, of the economic situation for people who are unemployed or have lost their opportunity to even be employed. And when we talk about the other group of people who are long-term employees who are obviously aware that healthcare costs are going up, that food costs are going up, but so are the people that are unemployed and non-employed anymore. They're getting hit twice, right? They've either lost their jobs permanently, temporarily, which is a direct hit on their savings, and they're faced with these costs. Therefore, in light of this bigger picture, I think that is the picture that has to be presented to those of us who are lucky enough to be employed. And we have to say, look, we can't deal with the raises and we can't deal with these things at this time. We're lucky that we're not cutting staff. In some states, people are being asked to take furloughs. State of Oregon as well, right? So, I mean, my position, I think, is to take a broader picture of those issues.
Okay, I'm mindful of the fact that we also need to move on to the Planning Commission interviews. I don't want to cut this short, but I do think that in fairness, we will need to do that. So I'd like to be able to close this interview session and thank the applicants so much for coming, for being so well prepared, both in your written submissions and in your answers here tonight. And again, it's really, as a mayor, as a volunteer in the city, it's a privilege for me to know that people like yourselves are willing to apply and to come and to be a part of what we're trying to move forward with our city. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
I just hope that every ward that has an opening has as high quality of candidates.
Yes. Okay, I'll ask the applicants for the Planning Commission to come and assume these chairs in the center, and we'll get right into that process as well, and we'll follow the same process. We'll ask, Tyson, you don't want to give up that seat, right? We'll ask all four of you to introduce yourselves and to make your statement, what you bring to the position in the Planning Commission and some particular skills that you have, and try to limit that to 2 to 3 minutes each, and then we'll have council questions. So tonight we have with us for the Planning Commission applicants Richard Fry here, and Jill Nowacki, Tyson Pruitt, and Paul Young. Thank you. Mr. Fry, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Rich Fry. I am a developer home builder here in the.
Here we go.
I'm a developer home builder here in the Salem area. Have lived here since 1980. The reason that I would like to be on the Planning Commission is that I feel that my experience being a developer and a home builder will help me see both sides of the issue. I've got plenty of experience. I was the board of directors at Creekside. I also ran the architectural review committee. So I've had to make some tough decisions with people that I know quite well that have had issues out there and have had to rule fairly. And so I think that that's really what the Planning Commission does, is listen to the facts and try to make a fair decision. I also think that with my background, I can bring some experience, having dealt with the city staff, knowing what the codes are, having worked with neighborhood associations, and I have young grandchildren, and I want this to be a really good city for them to live in, like it has been for the number of years that I've lived here. And I think that's my goal being on the commission, is to keep Salem the nice town that it is and not a Portland or something like that. As far as growth goes, I've been places, Las Vegas, you drive out to Henderson and you have bare desert, then you have a apartment complex, bare desert, subdivision. That's something I don't want to see in Salem, so that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
Yes, my name is Paul Young. I'm a pastor, a businessman, and an investor. I know some people don't think those go together, but they do with me. Been involved in leadership for over 36 years. I've been in Salem for going on 24 years. And I have always encouraged people to be involved in the city and in the community. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to begin to practice what I preached. And not just rely on everyone else to do it, but get involved myself. And I've been attending council here for a year and a half. The only time I have missed is when I'm out of the country on business. And those of you that are in council know that I'm here till the last dog's hung, because I'm not here on a single issue. I'm here because I love this city, and I am looking for how I can serve the city. And I believe that I bring some knowledge in this area. I have dealt with many building projects and things along this line in zoning and so on. And I believe that I can bring a perspective and some help to the Planning Commission. So decided to put my name in and see if you want me to serve.
Thank you. Ms. Nowacki?
Jill Nowacki. I'm a vice president at MAPS Credit Union right now, and I'm relatively new to the Salem area. I've been here for 3 years after some time in Washington, D.C. and Montana. I grew up in Oregon. I'm a native Oregonian. And one of the things that I feel that I can bring to the Planning Commission is bringing some perspective from having lived in different cities, but knowing the uniqueness that is Salem. One of my favorite things about being in Salem is the planning that has gone to this point, that there's really a strong respect for the historic downtown area and the culture that is part of that and the character that is part of that community. But there also seems to be a really strong awareness of the importance of economic growth in order to attract new families to the community, new people to the community, and to make sure that there is a future for this community as well. I admire the way Salem has used the downtown mixed-use area and also has done industrial growth on the exterior perimeter of the community. I feel like there's also a lot through the Chamber's Leadership Salem program that I learned that opened my eyes to some other areas of the history and the background of Salem and the agricultural community, and the thought and the consideration that needs to be going into the urban growth boundaries and looking at how we can continue to focus on maintaining the character that makes the downtown area desirable, the economic growth that makes the community as a whole vibrant and thriving and attractive, as well as the respect to what we need to do agriculturally, also to keep our economy thriving, but to keep our the same strong history and culture and economic vibrancy that we have here as well. I believe that the ability to work with a lot of different types of groups in the community as a credit union professional, one of the areas that we really devote our attention to is making sure that all members of our community have financial services. I think that keeping those same needs of all members of the community in mind as we look at planning is important too, to make sure that we're considering how somebody who may not be able to afford to live in the downtown area can still use the transportation available to access those areas or other services too. So I believe that that background and being able to keep those thoughts in mind during the Planning Commission process will be important.
Thank you. Mr. Pruitt?
Thank you. Yes, it is mentioned being involved and actively involved in the community, I think is important, and that's also why I am here today. I think it really is important to look at the city, the surrounding area as a whole, and to not just focus in on one particular area. my experience, I'm not as experienced as some of the people directly in development and that, but I have been through the process with my own project, our own office, and going through the planning and working through the city and understanding how that works. I also have been involved in the West Salem Redevelopment Board and working through the challenges that you can see and looking at all the different zoning, and in a 2-mile line having 7 different zones in there, and understanding some of the challenges that provide, and looking at the third bridge and the challenge that we're 20 or 30 or 40 years in the process, and looking at how many years in the future will it be before that becomes a reality. And so I think looking at the big picture and understanding really that it's not just about the developer, it's not just about the special interest, but it's about what makes Salem special as a whole, and looking at it through that lens is what I bring to the board.
Okay, thank you. Counselors, are there any questions for our applicants this evening? Yes, Mr. Counselor Clausen?
I thought one of the questions in the packet was good, but if you guys wouldn't mind doing a quick rundown of what the relationship is, your understanding of the relationship between the Planning Commission and Code, and how those relate to council as well. So it's kind of 3-pronged approach there, but Code, how the Planning Commission looks at it, and how they relate to council.
Shall we start with Mr. Fry?
If I understand the question, I think that the Planning Commission's job is to hear from both sides on any issue, both the applicant and the opposition to the application, and to take into account not what their personal feelings are, but what the code is, and to ask city staff for additional information, and also to ask the applicant and the opposition for their input. And whichever has the most compelling argument, I feel, is the way that the committee needs to advise the council. So it's a code thing. I think that the Planning Commission has the ability to maybe bring some more tools to the table, some different zoning and different things to suggest to the council, so that we can do better things. But I think that's the goal of the committee, is to advise the council on what the code actually is, and not what their personal feelings are.
Okay, Mr. Young?
The Planning Commission is here to take a workload off of the council, to consider things, look at the code, see what the code says, and then take into consideration all the facts that are presented, and then make a decision and recommendation to the council. And if we do our job right, then you won't have a lot of stuff to do here in the council that we should have been doing. And so we're not here to change the code or adjust the code. We're here to take the code, look at what it says, and then take all the facts that come into it, and then make a recommendation to you that hopefully will be a smooth sailing through the city council part of it.
Okay. Ms. Nowacki?
It's difficult to answer this question without sounding redundant, but that's probably a good thing, because it means we all share the same understanding of the role. But I perceive the Planning Commission as an advisory board to the city. I think our job is to go out and to listen, to become educated, to become knowledgeable both about what the community needs are and what the existing code is and why it's that way, and then to bring forth recommendations to council and information that we receive.
Okay, Mr. Pruitt?
You think yours was tough? I now have to follow the same answer from you. Basically, echo what they say. Thankfully, last time I was here, you asked a question about chickens, and so I'm just glad that wasn't what the question was this time.
I've heard Brad's got his chickens on the way.
All right, Saturday.
Yeah, do you have your permit?
I believe we have questions from Councilor Dickey.
Thank you. I want to expound on the question that was in your packet regarding other agencies and how the city works together to plan. So I'm just going to throw a scenario out that I just kind of made up. But I'm thinking of maybe the school district would like to build a school on a piece of land that needs to be rezoned by the city, that one side might have a state highway on it, another street going by it might be an unimproved street in Marion County with no sidewalks, and there's no transit service within 2 miles of that school. What's your role in bringing those groups together? Or do you feel like, do you see that there is one?
Are you starting with me?
Tyson, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, well, what I see, part of the role that I see the planning board has is to try and look at this. Part of the reason you have such a large group of people on it is trying to identify who all the stakeholders are in a project. And so I think it's important for them to try and identify who are all the players that need to come together to do this. I don't know that it's necessarily the board's role to facilitate all the meetings and to try and do all of that, but I really do see that it's their job to try and identify both the short-term and long-term impacts as it's going to relate, because as you get out and looking at code, it becomes really complicated with all the issues. And so I see it basically is that first step in the process.
Okay, yes?
I guess it's too soon to say I agree on this one, too. No, I believe that the Planning Commission has the opportunity to serve as a partner to those other organizations, going to the table as an advocate for the city of Salem. So keeping in mind, first and foremost, the needs of the city when it goes forward, but then being able to take the time to talk to the state, to talk to the county, to talk to the, to explore why there is no transit service in that area yet, and get a better understanding of what those other groups' needs are and what they're coming to the table with as the Planning Commission talks to the school more deeply about what it is that they're looking for, and then being able to take all of that information forward and put it into a recommendation to the city. Certainly, the most important part in building those partnerships and looking for that information, though, is making sure that the loyalty or the obligation is first and foremost in serving as the advocate for the best needs of the city of Salem. So.
Mr. Young?
The purpose of the Planning Commission in a scenario like this is to bring consistent, uniform direction for, regardless of who the entity is, whether we're dealing with the state, whether we're dealing with the school district, or who it is. The Planning Commission needs to keep things uniform, consistent, lay out the guidelines. Then the particular entity would then have to fit what the guidelines are that have been set, both in the code and the guidelines that you have given us. And it's always a challenge, because sometimes you want to lean one way toward, somebody likes this, somebody doesn't like that. But it's consistency is very important no matter what area of life you're dealing with. And this is very important here in the Planning Commission as well.
Okay.
So
Mr.
now it's my
Fry?
turn to say that I agree with everything that they've said as well. I do think that the Planning Commission needs to take a strong role in coordinating anything that's going to take place within the city limits, whether it's the county, the school district, whether it's the transit district, occasionally the state. I think that we can work as the hub of the wheel, I guess I would say, and coordinate between all of the different agencies that sometimes don't talk to each other about projects that happen right across the street from each other, paving a new road and then trying to cut in to put in a sewer or something like that. I think that the city needs to take a real active role in coordinating all of those activities that fall within the city limits or even the urban growth boundary, as far as just really making sure that everything meshes together well.
Okay. I see no other questions from counselors, so we'll close our interview process at this point. Again, thanking each one of you for your good preparation and for the time that you've taken to come this evening and to join us for the interview process. Thank you very much. We're going to take a very quick recess, and then we'll go into our special council meeting.
I just got it.
Council meeting for April 4, 2011 is now in session. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Bennett.
Here.
Counselor Tesler. Present. Counselor Nanki.
Here.
Counselor Clausen.
Here.
Counselor Dickey. Here. Counselor Thomas. Here. Counselor Cannon is absent. Counselor Clem.
Here.
Mayor Peterson.
Here. Okay, we're going to have a treat this evening, our Pledge of Allegiance. We have Troop 18 here to join us and to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please come down to the center? I think that, Brad, maybe you want to kind of assemble them down here.
I called it.
And feel it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. And where are you from? I know you're Troop 18, but do you all go to the same school? No?
South Salem.
South Salem area. Well, welcome and thank you for coming and helping us to open our session this evening. We appreciate having you here, and you're always welcome.
To serve as counselors in the future.
Yes, that's right. This is good training for you. You should be sitting up here someday. Okay. I'm going to ask Counselor Bennett if you'd make a motion to approve the special meeting agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval of the agenda for the special meeting of April 4th.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Bennett and seconded by Counselor Tesler. Thank you. Sorry, Counselor Tesler. To approve the special meeting agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. We have some individuals signed up this evening for public comment. We have 3 people, and I would ask you to come in the order in which you're signed up. First, Jason Brandt, and then Ray Burstead and Rob McKinney. So if the first person, please come to the podium and state your name and address or the ward where you reside. And you'll have 3 minutes to address the council, and there's a light on the podium. So when you see the yellow light, you have 1 minute left. The red light means you've reached 3 minutes, and you probably know that better than I do. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. My name is Jason Brandt with the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce, 1110 Commercial Street Northeast. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We're here with good news, and hopefully you're all excited about the willingness of Seaport Airlines to offer commercial air service from Salem's airport. I just wanted to actually focus on 2 things as a part of some brief testimony tonight. The first being there was overwhelming support from the business community for this service, which would leave from Salem with a quick stop in Portland for those that wanted to get off with connecting flights at PDX, but then also for service on to Boeing Field in Seattle. I just wanted to share with you some of our survey results, share it with the Statesman Journal as well in detail, but in about a 24-hour period, we had over 350 unique business people take our survey, which is pretty phenomenal. It shows demand in and of itself. As a part of that survey, I want to read a couple highlights to you. The first question we asked, assuming prices are competitive with PDX, would you fly from Salem to Seattle's Boeing Field using Seaport Airlines at some point in the next year? 72% of those 350 business respondents said they would, in fact, use the service within the next year. Also, one of the things that you'll be discussing and hearing about is the fact that one of the proposed flights is actually planning to be operated early in the morning, a departure time of around 5:35 or 5:40 in the morning on weekdays. One of our other questions, if you could fly on Seaport Airlines from Salem's airport with a departure time of around 5:35 a.m., and arrive at Seattle's Boeing Field by 7:10 a.m. with a 15-minute stop at Flightcraft, adjacent to PDX. To pick up passengers, would you utilize the service? And we still had overwhelming support at 67%. So just wanted to be here in an official capacity with the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce and let you all know that we're here as a partner and making this service successful, and it definitely resonates with our business passengers here in the area.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Brandt? Yes, Councilor Clem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jason, one of the considerations would be that the city partner with Seaport and Chamber and others and businesses in the marketing aspect. Could you speak just briefly about how that would work with the Chamber?
Yeah, we've had some conversations already with their marketing staff and making sure that we're a collaborative partner if we were in fact chosen by the city to participate in a partnership to make sure marketing was fully leveraged. So we're ready to go. It's a short timeline, but we can make it happen.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming down
Thank you.
this evening, and we appreciate the time and the effort that the Chamber went to poll its members and to bring that report to us. Thank you. Mr. Burstead, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good to see you in that capacity. City Manager Norris and council members, we have much the same report. Excuse me, my name is Ray Burstead. I live at 626. I get this mixed up because I work at 626 and I live at 262. So I live at 262 Muirfield Avenue Southeast, Ward 4. I lived most of my life at 626 High Street Northeast at the SEDCOR offices. We did a survey as well of our business partners. We had 76% of the people that we polled said they would use the service. 51% of those were business travelers that would be traveling to Portland or to Seattle on a regular basis. 19% of those were people that would use it only for the PDX connection because it is a distinctive alternative to the driving up, parking your car for 4 or 5 days. This would be much more economical for most businesses to just hop on this, and if they could make the right connections to use it. 4% of the people only that we surveyed were leisure travelers. The rest were all business travelers. So pretty much across the board, our members were excited about it. We have yes, 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 and all these different responses come in on our survey. So there were some negatives. Some people, there were just some people that said they wouldn't use it. So about 6% of the people said they didn't plan to use it.
Okay. All right.
With that,
Are there questions for Mr. Burstead? I apologize. I see there is a gentleman who has a question, but we only take questions from the counselors at this portion of the program. But perhaps if you could speak to Mr. Burstead afterwards or after his testimony. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you being here. Certainly want to say that. Thank you. Okay. All right, Mr. Burstead, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate SEDCOR taking the time and putting together the stats for us and helping with that survey. Thank you very much. Okay, Rob McKinney. Mr. McKinney, welcome, and you have 3 minutes, and please state your name and address, and then watch the lights. The first one is your warning light. After 2 minutes, that's a yellow light, and then you have 1 minute left with the red light.
Well, I will try to avoid the big hook so that I don't go run along. My name is Rob McKinney, President and CEO of Seaport Airlines. I'm from 950 Northeast 144th Court across the river in Vancouver, Washington. It gives me great pleasure to join you this evening to announce Seaport's dedication to the capital of Oregon. Seaport being Oregon's only hometown airline, we've finally grown to the point where we felt incumbent on us to make sure Oregon is not one of the trivia questions anymore. What's the state capital that doesn't have air service? We're very excited about this opportunity. We are very pleased that we were able to do some research and come in with fares that I think people will find affordable and will spur the market. We're going to start with fares to just Portland at $29, and fares from Salem all the way to Seattle at $99 for advance purchase. So we think that that should be a price that would motivate people that they would not want to get in their cars and make that drive either way, either just going to Portland to connect or all the way to Seattle. Presuming the successful completion of tonight's vote, we're also planning an open house on April 20th where we're going to bring an aircraft down, show the community what it is we have to offer, kind of see what we're all about, have some food and some drinks, and reintroduce people to the Salem's beautiful brand new terminal and their new airline. So we're very, very pleased to be in the state's capital. We're very excited that this is going to be a service that will only starting with 2 trips a day, but we think it's going to grow from there as we continue to add service further east and further north.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. McKinney? Councilor Dickey?
I do, but I don't know if this is the appropriate time to, I know we'll have a staff report in a little while, so I'll hold my questions.
Okay. Councilor Clem?
Hi, Rob. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, Seaport Airlines, introductory fare. I mean, this isn't just about business travel. I mean, this is people who want to get on their vacation, want to be able to get anywhere in the world. So you fly me to Boeing Field. How do I get to see the rest of the world? I get a shuttle to SeaTac, and then I can fly on any major airline. Help me understand how the average citizen benefits from this.
Sure. Well, the average citizen, the easiest way to connect would be connections out of Portland, where you're parking for $3 a day here in Salem, or you're parking for $12 to $18 a day in PDX, plus the cost in the town of getting your car there. If you would rather connect out of Seattle, it's certainly possible. We now have so many trips into Seattle that there's 3 cab drivers that make their full-time living just off Seaport passengers. So there's plenty of opportunities. We also can arrange town cars, and we are the resident Hertz dealer, so we arrange rent cars for people who are just doing day trips to Seattle.
Yes, Councilor Dickey.
Thank you. Will you be doing any like small cargo, small packages or anything like that? Or are you passenger only? And what kind of capacity do you have for the passengers for their luggage?
We have a baggage policy that's one of the best in the industry. We carry up to 35 pounds absolutely for free, no matter how many bags that you happen to bring with you. Beyond that, it's a one-time $35 charge, whether you bring 36 pounds or you bring 136 pounds. To date, we've never not carried someone's luggage. We've always been able to make it on. To your first question, absolutely. Package service, counter-to-counter envelope service. We've had a very successful cargo business out of Pendleton where we carry fresh flowers and live fish, where they were afraid to put them on the larger carriers because they get put on conveyor belts and get roughly handled, whereas with Seaport, everything's handled personally and with care.
Okay, Councilor Clem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to comment on what a great aircraft that is. Describe it. I mean, I flew through a storm in the Pilatus, and it's highly dependable, and it's very comfortable.
Well, I think that's the only storm Seaport's ever flown through. You had bad luck. But we are very proud of our aircraft. It's one of the few that's in commuter service that's still in production. Most commuter aircraft that you get on today have been out of production for 15, 20 years sometimes. What we use is the Pilatus aircraft made in Switzerland, state-of-the-art, still in production and backlogged 18 months. It is typically a corporate aircraft, brand new. They sell for $4.2 million, and it's a very, very quality aircraft that it's pressurized, it's fast, it's as fast as what SkyWest would fly, and it has the ability to get above the weather just like a SkyWest kind of aircraft.
All right, Councilor Mankey.
Thanks for coming down.
Sure.
If you don't know, we've had issues with noise complaints in the past at the airport. describe the noise profile of the aircraft.
It is one of the lowest in the industry. One of the upsides of having a single engine aircraft is that you only have one spinny thing up there making noise. The other thing is that the RPMs only spins at 1,700, which most other competitor aircraft are between 19 and 2,200. So the faster the prop spins, the higher the tip speed, and that's what actually makes the noise that annoy people. So as noise go, we are one of the friendliest neighbors that you could possibly have.
We like that.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming this evening, appreciate all the extra information, and look forward to hearing the staff report. Thank you. Okay, the next agenda item this evening is the election of Citizen Budget Committee members. So in front of you, I believe you all have the ballots for the Budget Committee. I would ask you to please mark your ballots, and then the acting city attorney is going to be collecting those.
You sure we have enough?
Oh, we do. You should have.
Just no bad practice.
Oh,
We brought extras in case.
right. And this is ballot 1, so be sure that you use the right ballot.
You voted for planning commission?
Twice. We'll just have a short pause here while we allow our acting city attorney to do the math. Yeah, exactly.
So it makes sense.
Okay. No person having received a majority of all votes cast, the top 2 nominees are to proceed. However, in this case, there are 2 who ties for the top 2, so we have all 3 that essentially proceed to ballot number 2. Mary Ayala got 2 votes, Tyson Pruitt got 4 votes, and Nathan, Wirch, I apologize if I, but got 2 votes as well. So.
I think we just need a moment of clarification here.
So
Okay.
the top 2, under the council rules, the top 2 vote getters proceed to the next ballot. However, in this case, second place was a tie, so all 3
I see.
are now to proceed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And you've all got ballots marked, ballot number 2.
Clarification, if I could, please, to the acting city attorney.
Yes.
Does the top candidate have to receive 5 votes out of the 8?
5 out of the 8
To receive a majority?
That is correct. In which
Okay.
case, there would be no more balloting after,
Got it.
if a candidate receives a majority. One second. Let me look at the rule one more time, because I think it is actually
Yeah, that's
well,
before you
it's a
count
majority
these.
of all votes cast. So it is, since we only have 8, it is.
Okay,
needs
so it has to be 5.
You have voted.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. After the second round of balloting, Mr. Tyson Pruitt received the majority of votes cast, and he's the successful nominee.
All right. Well, congratulations, Mr. Pruitt. We welcome you to the Budget Committee, and you'll be hearing more from us about the scheduled time for Budget Committee meetings and so on and so forth. So congratulations, yes. It's Wednesday night, be sure. Block out your Wednesday nights now. Thank you. And to the other applicants, I really do say a very sincere thank you so much for being willing to be an applicant and for being here with us. Thank you. All right. The next agenda item this evening is the election of the Planning Commission member, and you have ballots for that as well.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Does Tyson's name come off of?
Yes, it does.
Oh, yes, right. I should have indicated that. I'm sorry. Yeah. Actually, Mr. Tyson, Mr. Pruitt, you wouldn't be able to serve on both, so you automatically then withdraw from the Planning Commission.
You also have to find your replacement on the Urban Renewal Board, too.
These things are sort of like dominoes, aren't they? Okay, all right.
And you have to pay the counselors.
And you have to fly Seaport Airlines.
Make sure everybody's on ballot number 1.
Ballot number
1, okay.
Okay, Mr. Richard Fry received a majority of all the votes cast, so he is the successful nominee.
Congratulations, Mr. Fry, and welcome to the Planning Commission. We appreciate the service that you're going to be giving, and we'll be in touch with you so that you know the schedule for the Planning Commission meetings in the future. Thank you. And again, thank you also to the other applicants. It's really heartening for me, and I know for the council, to have such really highly qualified applicants. We really appreciate you and hope that you still maintain an interest and desire to serve. We'd be very pleased to see you again in the interview process. Thank you. Okay. Our next order of business this evening has to do with the Seaport Airline service, and we have a staff report this evening, and we have 3 agenda items, 4C, 4D, and 4E. And what we're going to do is to take each of those separately, but we'll start with one staff report. And I believe that John Wales from the Urban Development Department is here to do the staff report. Welcome.
Good evening.
Is that right? Is that not right?
Well, you have the staff, I would be happy to speak to it if you'd like me to explain it. I think you all have a copy of the report for approval tonight, and it summarizes very much of what we've heard from our public comment and from the people that have come to speak tonight. That since Delta left the city of Salem about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we've been looking for a replacement airline to provide air service to and from Salem. And so we were very pleased when, working with our partners, both at the Chamber of Commerce and at SEDCOR, when Seaport Air came to meet with us and discuss opportunities of providing service from Newport to Salem and from Salem to Portland with connecting flights onto Pendleton and onto Seattle. And because this was a relatively new venture for them, and we were very excited about the opportunity here in Salem, we wanted to bring that opportunity to you tonight because they're ready to start service by the end of the month. And what they've asked is that when they start to have a 6-month grace period, and what this agreement is for 6 months. It can be extended, and hopefully it will be successful and it will continue to grow. But for that service, they are asking that we waive our landing fees, which we estimate they're nominal. Equates to about $334 a month, and that we provide free rent, and basically at the terminal. And what the rent would be is another nominal fee of about $419 a month, and that's for their ticket window. To help them, as they have introduced these introductory prices, to help them get established and get their feet on the ground. And so we have 3 action items for you to consider tonight. The first is the actual agreement with Seaport to provide those flights to Portland twice a day and returning twice a day, as I think you heard described tonight. And then a resolution waiving the landing fee for up to 6 months, and for the other item is for the parking. We are recommending that we increase our parking rate from $1 to $3 a day, allowing the first 2 hours to be free to allow for transportation to come to and from the airport, for people to drop off and pick up, and to conduct business if needed at the airport. So those are the 3 items that we have here tonight.
Okay, thank you. We're going to consider these one at a time. So item 4C is the airport use license agreement. And you find that, of course, that was in your packet. Councillor Tesler, this airport is in your ward, as you well know. And would you like to make a motion regarding item 4C?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor Peterson. I will move staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councillor Tesler and seconded by Councillor Nanke to accept the staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously. Item D is a resolution. Resolution setting fees and charges for the municipal airport. Councillor Tesler, would you make a motion for that, please?
Thank you. I will. I'll move staff recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Tesler and seconded by Councillor Nanke to move the staff recommendation for item 4D, Resolution 20-11-23. Yes, Councillor Nanke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question on the parking and how much it actually costs us to.
This isn't the parking one, excuse me, but parking.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, this
Setting
one is
fees.
the parking.
Oh, it is the parking one. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And just, are we really making money, or is it a wash? Basically, I don't like to have something if it's cost neutral and adding bureaucracy in.
Yes, and Mr. Wells can address that.
Mr. Wells?
Yes. The parking at the airport, as you may recall, when we had previous air service here, had been waived, and it was basically free parking. We've asked to institute or increase the parking. We're not exactly sure yet how many people are going to use the service and how many, and actually what the revenue is going to be. We're making some assumptions about it. We believe that this is a fair, a fair charge. To answer your question specifically, do we know if it's going to cover the cost? We're looking into different options right now to provide new parking equipment, such as pay and display machines. We're looking to get those out of a grant, our continued grant from Connect Oregon too. So the major expenses that we've had on the parking issues, such as for example, a pay and display machine, resurfacing of the, restriping of the parking lot, have all been paid out of our terminal grant, our airport expansion terminal grant. So we don't have a huge operating cost, and we're hoping to keep those to a minimum. I might ask Mark Juck, our new manager of the airport, to speak directly to that, because he's got some ideas on how we're going to be managing parking in the future.
Excellent.
Yeah, hello, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. This is a great chance to bring Seaport in, and we're trying to institute something so that the user fees can cover the costs and other things at the airport. One of the interesting things right now, we do have a lot of commerce out there just with the car rental business. So there's a lot of passengers already that come out there, pick up a car and other things. With this parking fee, we hope to use that to attract or at least pay bills and other things that are necessary at the airport to cover other costs and other fees instead of having the city subsidize. So it would be a user fee sort of scenario. And at $3 a day, it's very inexpensive. We don't think any businessman is going to be turned away with that sort of a fee. And we're trying to look at a low-cost solution, pay and display, that most people are familiar with. And beyond that, the first 6 months will be kind of a test period. But as Mr. Wales indicated, our initial outlay is pretty limited.
A follow-up, if I may, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Counselor Nanke and then Counselor Dickey.
Even with the pay and display type mechanism, there still has to be enforcement. Someone actually going out and looking at the vehicles and making sure that they in fact do have a card or what have you, would it not? And who would do that? Basically, if it's an hour a day, if you got 4 flights moving in and out or what have you, an hour a day for 150 days, half a year, costs more than the revenue, is my concern.
We've talked to the parking enforcement people, and they've told us that they can train an airport staff person to do that function. So
it would be someone who's there already.
Correct.
Excellent.
Okay. Counselor Dickey? Oh, that was your question too? All right, okay. Are there further questions? Counselor Tessler and then Counselor Clem.
Well, thank you for coming to your first council meeting as a new airport manager. I just wanted to make a small correction. It's business person, not businessman. Just okay, because I do business too, and I'm not a man. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, or basically comment on, is that I think $3 is totally reasonable. When you go and park up in Portland and you're gone for longer than a week, it is very, very expensive to park up in Portland because you have to park outside the airport usually, and it's $10 a day average, and that's cheap. So $3 a day is great. I'd gladly pay $3 a day.
Okay. Counselor Clem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mark, welcome. We don't know how much it may cost to enforce it, but that parking lot's been recently paved when Delta came in. So does it make sense that most airports, small, large, in between, have a right to recover their costs for the paving and for the striping and everything else? In your experience in other airports, is parking fees just part of the normal expectation that an airport does to recover its costs?
Definitely. I just came down here from Spokane, where parking would generate about 1/3 of our revenue.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, we do call for the vote at this point. Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, now we're going to take item 4E. Counselor Tessler, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you. I'll move staff recommendation on this one as well.
Okay. It's been moved by Counselor Tessler and seconded by Counselor Nanke to accept the staff report, the staff recommendation. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. If there's no further business to come before the council, this meeting will be adjourned.
Can we have an executive session?